Hello, students. Today's episode of Thunderbolt features our in-house article from wonderful writer Thomas L. Friedman. Now, just in case if you don't know who that is, Thomas L. Friedman is a writer and editor for New York Times. He usually writes for foreign affairs. He has written 6 bestsellers, and among which 3 were awarded Pulitzer Prizes. And one very famous one is The World is Flat, and I think the second, I guess arguably the second famous, in my mind, this is my favorite book, is The Lexus and the Olive Tree. This book was widely read in Korea because one of the very famous foreign author, Robert T. Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 부자 박하는 아빠, he praises this guy. And this is one of the key books that spread the word globalization, and we're going to learn about that today. Now, it's about almost 20 years since its publication, but this book is still very relevant and still talked very highly of in the economic circle. So, let's do it. Hey, Eddie.
Hi, thank you for inviting me again.
All right, so what you think about this passage? And I understand you did some research about the book too and the author.
Yeah, this book was really as any of you seen our previous video,
right,
on our second Korea University early admission 국제학부 대비. It was really, they have common things like what is globalization and
right.
expanding more and looking for new things, innovation, and how people move and leave their country or coming to country for better employment and living standards.
Right.
And this article written by book or Thomas L. Friedman is really focusing on economic side of globalization.
Right.
Really interesting how he talks about Lexus sedans or produced like 300 Lexus sedans every day. He visited Toyota factory,
Right.
and 66 human beings and 310 robots, and very detailed.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, let's briefly talk about the word globalization. I understand Thomas Friedman has his own definition of globalization, or
Yeah.
I guess the definition of what globalization is in the early 2000s. And today we also look at the word globalization slightly differently.
Yeah.
Right? So what is it?
General, the big picture of globalization is advancing in technology, mobile phones, airplanes, everything, transportation system had made us to connect each other, how we move to China, to the United States in 13 hours, and how we are connected in Instagram, Facebook, like Twitter stuff, on how we're connected, how we can see what's happening on opposite side of the world by watching CNN,
Right.
and everything that are connected. So these improvements made us to exchange goods and information more quickly than before.
Right.
So it is a big picture of globalization.
And to an extent, I think it'll be worthwhile for our students to study some of Thomas Friedman's book titles. As I said, one of his other very famous book is titled The World is Flat. And the whole meaning based between is the world is flat means no more are the world skewed or imbalanced, or there's some kind of hierarchy, because information is for everybody. And another his key idea said here and anywhere else in his lectures is that globalization really had democratized the world in a way so that everyone is given the same kind of opportunity, same kind of power to conquer and learn. And with that also, he doesn't specifically say that, but I guess I'm saying capitalism is also had spread, right?
Yeah.
Now, so before we read this, once again, the symbolism here is that Lexus stands for globalism.
Yeah.
Right? And newness. And again, this book was written in 1999 and became very famous in the 2000s. And Lexus, in that time, was the fastest and the biggest selling foreign car of America, in America, and arguably all around the world, right? It outsold Benz, it outsold BMW for many years. Now, an olive tree, what does olive tree stand for?
Olive tree, as you know, trees have roots.
Right.
So it means that where we belong. So example of olive tree can be like our nationality. So Republic of Korea or United States, where you belong, where your roots are, or where your family come from. So those sort of things are symbol of olive tree.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Your regionalism, your regional idea, your religion, your beliefs,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. Okay, good. Now, so let's read and talk about what it is a little more. Once you recognize that globalization is an international system that has replaced the Cold War system, is this all you need to know to explain world affairs today? Not quite. Globalization is what is new. And if the world were made of just microchips and markets, you could probably rely on globalization to explain almost everything. But alas, the world is made up of microchips and markets and men and women with all their peculiar habits, traditions, longings, and unpredictable aspirations. Do world affairs today can only be explained as the interaction between what is as new as an internet website and what is as old as gnarled olive tree on the banks of the River Jordan? I first started thinking about this while riding on a train in Japan in May 1992, eating a sushi box dinner and traveling at 180 miles per hour. I was in Tokyo on a reporting assignment and had arranged to visit the Lexus luxury car factory outside Toyota City, south of Tokyo. At that time, the factory was producing 300 Lexus sedans each day, made by 66 human beings and 310 robots. After touring the factory, I went back to Toyota City and boarded the bullet train for the ride back to Tokyo. The bullet train is aptly named, for it has both the look and feel of a speeding bullet. As I nibbled away on one of those sushi dinner boxes you can buy in any Japanese train station, I was reading the day's International Herald Tribune, and a story caught my eye in the top right corner of page 3. It was about the daily State Department briefing. State Department spokesman Margaret D. Twitler had given a controversial interpretation of a 1948 United Nations resolution relating to the right of return for Palestine refugees to Israel. I don't remember all the details, but whatever her interpretation was, it had clearly agitated both the Arabs and the Israelis and sparked a furor in the Middle East, which this story was reporting. It struck me then that the Lexus and the olive tree were actually pretty good symbols of this post-Cold War era. Half the world seemed to be emerging from the Cold War intent on building a better Lexus, dedicating to modernizing, streamlining, and privatizing their economies in order to thrive in the system of globalization, and half of the world, sometimes half the same country, sometimes half the same person, was still caught up in the fight over who owns which olive tree. Olive trees are important. They represent everything that roots us, anchors us, identifies us. Good. So,
Yeah.
very well-written piece of writing here. Now, what were some of the things that struck your eye as you were reading this?
Post-Cold War era.
Okay.
So how Lexus and olive tree are used to symbolize those. He said half the world seem emerging together, streamlining, modernizing, and privatizing
All right.
their economies, but other half was actually fighting which olive tree they own. It really struck eyes how globalization actually caused people to gather together, but also fight over each other for certain things. So it was really interesting.
When you talk about people fighting over regional ideas or region-based thoughts, their fight over religion, and Israelis and Palestine, and how they are still doing what they did hundreds of years ago still. So the world is in a way splitting between those who wants to emerge from the collapses of the war, during the war stage. So if you look at Japan, they went from war-ridden economy to the world's second biggest, right? While countries like Palestine and Israel, they're still fighting the same war that they have had for years. Okay, now let's get to the questions, and because through it we'll be able to answer much Now, what is the naming? What is the meaning of the Lexus as symbolized by the author? We just went through.
Yep.
Lexus symbolizes the newness, the new globalization, and people's efforts to build.
Yeah.
And
innovation.
Innovation.
Yeah.
Suggest some specific examples which can be explained by the Lexus. Now, as you said, innovation, and I want to put in automation. Especially Japan's big on that, right?
Yeah.
And number 3, what is the meaning of the olive tree as symbolized by the author? Olive tree meaning regional ideas, once again.
Yeah.
Number 4, suggest some specific examples which can be explained by the olive tree. Palestinian war. People still fight over that.
Yeah.
All right. Number 5, explain the author's understanding on the post-Cold War era as mentioned in the given excerpt. Okay. Now, post-Cold War era, there are 2 types of people, right? People who are still fighting the war of, claiming lands and their ideas versus people who wish to grow their economy and become a world player.
Yeah.
Right? Number 6, what is your opinion over the author's understanding on the post-Cold War era? What is your rationale? Now, this would be a big one, and this one can be counted as an essay question. Now, if you were to handle this question, how would you do it?
The Friedman actually states globalization only applies to developed countries.
Right.
So no wars, ready to merge together, work together. So, for example, America has technology, tools to make difference.
Right.
And they also improved transportation system. They also improved medical systems.
Right.
And all sort of improvement in technology and people's desire to move forward actually made America so great that they're standing right now. So I think globalization only can be applied or will be applied to only developed and innovative country that are willing to move forward and look for new things and make everybody happy. And
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. And for those students who had watched our earlier video where we talked about Cameroon, right? So the idea of globalization may not really be applied to countries like that, right? Because they're still developing to have the basis, right? Just to add, though, their part of globalization comes with people's responsibility and people accepting the idea that average is out. And this is one of the key concepts that Thomas Friedman still talks about in the days of now, where globalization has arrived.
And it's certainly not going to be a good time, and this is one of my central points, to be average. Because in the hyper-connected world, average is officially over. Your boss today, he or she has cheaper, easier, faster access to more above-average automation, above-average software, above-average robotics, above-average cheap labor, and above-average cheap genius. Average is officially over. That old saying in Texas, if all you ever do is all you've ever done, all you ever get is all you ever got, that is NA, no longer applicable. If all you ever do is all you've ever done, all you'll ever get is not all you ever got. You will get below average and much faster.
And he says what globalization provides is if you're an average, you're done. If you look at prosperous countries, developed countries, we have machines that are serving people. I mean, no longer do people actually go to markets anymore. I mean, we do for small things, but anything that costs a lot of money or anything that takes effort to get, we order online, right? Yeah. We don't want to be lugging those big water bottles to the car and do all that. We just want to go to the store and get it, or we just order online and then have it delivered to our house, right? So imagine going to Japan, and if anyone who had been to Japan would know, you no longer order food in Japan to cashiers or waitresses or waiters. I mean, some expensive places they do because that's quote unquote the service. But if you go to one of the ordinary ramen places, you order to a machine. You go to a vending machine and you order it. right? Because minimum wage has risen so much. Korea, we're starting to see that too, right? In 2018, a minimum wage hike happened, and now we have to pay delivery charges. I mean, just yesterday I ordered delivery food, and they asked me to pay 3,000원
for delivery fee.
Right?
Wow.
and those things had never happened before. And these kind of changes, people say, if we were somehow able to slow down the hike of minimum wage, we might have been able to, kept customers from, or I guess store owners from charging customers to pay their delivery fees, right? Because eventually the food prices might rise, and people, it'll be difficult for store owners to ask as their customers to pay for higher food prices and delivery prices, right? But now it's happening. So if you're an average company, if you're an average person, then it's done, because superior nation is going to produce not only superior products, but they are also going to produce machines that will replace you. And it's a warning sign here. I mean, this guy was visiting Toyota factory in 1992. Imagine what it might be like today, right? 2018, 2019, right? It had 66 people and 310 robots. So roughly 5 times. What if that has become, maybe there's 20 people and 500 or 600 machines now, right? Yeah. And, in these kind of societies, we have to face globally to produce what we want and to be prosperous, I think. Anyway, the post-Cold War era, what is your rationale? So if you don't look at the big picture, you no longer can really survive, because there's so much, choices being provided. Anything else you might add?
No.
Okay, good.